before I go into the God particle thing, I want to reiterate that you said that there seems to be more religious zealots than in a long time. Now, do you seem to forget why Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses? I don't think you quite understand, and many of your capitalist friends don't understand what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean that communism opposes religion up front. It suggests that religion is a painkiller. Remember, they didn't have painkillers as we know them today back in the 1800s. They used opiates. And because of that, think of it as saying religion is the painkiller of the masses. It is the way that the bourgeoisie relieve the stress and anxiety that naturally comes from class struggle and satisfies the people. It keeps them content, it keeps them grounded, it keeps them relaxed. It makes them feel like they have some greater purpose in life and that there is meaning to all of this, and that if they're just good people and they go to work and do their stupid routines, that they will be rewarded in the afterlife, or that God will notice what they're doing and appreciate them for trying to be a good person, etc. It's a means of controlling the population. Whether or not there is any evidence of a supernatural force is irrelevant to the fact that religion has been used to just keep the people docile. It keeps them docile because if people were to ever awaken from the fact that they are poor, they are misguided, and they have no hope or dreams, then they would revolt immediately. Is this to say that religion can have no place in communism whatsoever? Well, maybe in the long term, but in the short term, religion has been used against capitalism, because people actually believe those lies to such an extent that they will actually revolt against the very institutions that created them, because they believe that the supernatural forces are more real than the bourgeoisie that made the supernatural forces in the storyline that they did. In other words, the Frankenstein monster is out of control, and then it's used against its master. So that is to explain religious zealotry, and why I do not necessarily have a problem with religious zealots. I'll just kindly disagree with them. As far as the whole God particle and evolution and things like that, you seem to forget that, yes, there is the chaos theory. And if you ever watch physics programming, you would know that down to a microscopic level, certain electrons can be in 2 places at once, billion places at once, infinite places at once. The only time it's ever organized is when someone is observing it. Therefore, the question has to be asked, who was observing the universe before it became orderly? If it was, as evidence suggests in the particles that exist here and now, chaotic and everywhere at once, who was there to observe the universe in order to make substance out of it, in order for it to be to have some kind of rule of law? Therefore, that's where the entire intelligent design theory comes into place. Do I agree with intelligent design? I'm not going to say yes or no, because as someone that takes physics seriously, I'm not going to just come right out and say, no, that's wrong. But I will tell you that I find a bit of flaws in it, as I find a lot of flaws in a lot of things that these physics specials tout. That's why I say Stephen Hawking is just a exaggerated pseudo-intellectual. I mean, yes, he's smart. But is he so smart that we should hang on his every word? Of course not. Nobody is. You should take what he says and consult internally whether or not you think that there's any merit to that. And what has he actually contributed to the physics community? Has he actually contributed to the progress of technology and space exploration and discovery? Or is he just spouting a bunch of bullshit? You could argue that that's what I do. I just spout a bunch of bullshit. But do I get paid $1 billion to spout a bunch of bullshit? No. Stephen Hawking does. Therefore, if you were going to hate one of us, you should probably hate Stephen Hawking. That's just the way, that's just common sense. But, as I was saying, physics comes down to metaphysical principles. That's what I advocate. I advocate that when you get right down to it, before even the physical properties, there are the metaphysical principal elements to the universe. And the three principal elements are chaos, law, and evil. That's why I compare it to Dungeons and Dragons. Because in the Dungeons and Dragons alignment system, there is chaotic, good, evil, and lawful alignments. I don't believe necessarily in a good alignment. I do not believe there is any evidence to suggest that anything in this world has advocated good, advocated positivity, advocated benefit. It has only advocated destruction and selfishness and greed and hate, things like that. The illusion of good alignment only exists because it contradicts itself within. In other words, evil eats evil. Law and chaos are obviously opposed, and things like that. Chaos can create anything. There is unpredictability. There is infinite possibility. Law brings order to that. We obviously need some kind of structure in order to live and maintain and have some semblance of reality. And then there's evil, and that benefits us at the expense of somebody else, etc. And under all that clusterfuck, we have this disillusioned idea that there is good, but that does not suggest at all that there is good. That only suggests that we have such a magnitude of spectrums of morality that we cannot simply say, okay, well, bad, bad. It doesn't work that way. But to say that there is good, that's jumping a bit far. I mean, if there was good, there wouldn't be nearly as much evil, because good would naturally find a way to develop more good, which in turn would reduce the evil. It could use both chaos and law to its advantage to introduce more good rather than more evil. But it seems to be the opposite is true. It seems to be that evil uses both the principles of law and the principles of chaos to make more evil. When there is total disarray, it benefits evil. People kill each other. They trample all over each other. People don't know what to do. They're confused. They're scared. They're murderous. When there is order, they use it to control and to subvert and to enslave, and people love their enslavement, and they love to be raped, and they love to be, told what to do and have a gun pointed at the back of their head. And that's what I'm always talking about here, about how we have too much of a concentration of lawful evil alignment, where you have so much organization, so much stagnation, because there is so much tightly knit grouping between this elite couple of people that know what they're doing and want to just control every facet of people's lives, and it serves their evil interests, and there is just no progress. There is just no movement forward. And perhaps progress isn't the right word even. It's just there's nothing different. It's just that over and over and over, and it's only going to get worse. So therefore, you have to just side with whatever would be contrary to that. And considering the way it's so rigid, it's not very hard to be. And while that might not be good in and of itself, it's certainly better than just going with the same. So that's what I advocate. Metaphysics combined with quantum physics, and explaining the physical properties of our universe in such a way where it can be taught in philosophy as well as quantum theory. Now, you might disagree with that. You might say that that's a bit, flamboyant. That sounds too much like religion, etc. But when you get right down to it, it doesn't require the need of a supernatural being. You don't need a creator to explain this, and that's why I compared it to Buddhism and the karma wheel. And by the way, someone that posted in my comment section about how Buddhism doesn't believe in gods or anything like that. They might not necessarily believe in it, but they used it as prime examples. And the fact is, Buddhism is a descendant of Hinduism and just a more secular version of that, which is what I'm saying. Because, Wally, I don't talk about supernatural things that much, so it's a secular version of more religious doctrines, just as Buddhism was to Hinduism, and it's explaining things in a very similar manner. The only difference is Buddhism did believe in a good alignment and did ultimately believe that you could instill that good alignment universally, whereas I don't. I believe it gets worse. So, and this is something that is argued even amongst the physics community. The physics community cannot figure out whether or not eventually the universe is going to die, just reincarnate, reemerge, or if it's just going to continue onward forever and ever. You know, there's many different arguments. Like, when I first got into physics, I did not comprehend how the infinite stretching of the universe would lead to eternal cold. Because, sure, there would be so much vast space, it would be impossible for heat to actually heat anything and for light to actually reach anything. But with constant new particles being formed, one galaxy would just be as this galaxy is now, just farther away. But in that specific area of the infinite vastness of space, there would still be heat and light and things like that. However, that is under the presumption that yes, there are new particles always being born. There is new emergence of light and heat and all the things necessary for life, as well as the expansion of space. If you do not believe that, or if you believe it does not reproduce at a fast enough rate to equal that of the infinite reach of space, then you have the problem. Or if you think the reverse, and that the universe is crunching down, if it's like just introverted and growing smaller, then it's becoming more dense, and that gets into the singularity principle. And in the singularity principle, they think everything's going to die and just become one little tiny speck of heat that is just infinitely dense and infinitely weird. And then some people believe like in a bouncing ball theory, where it's going to get close to that infinite density and then expand outward again because it bounced, and things like that. There is a multitude of theories that many physicists believe in, and some of them seem more legitimate than others. And that's really all they can do, is talk about it and try to rationalize it, because we are not yet at a technological level to even imagine it. We are not yet at a technological capacity to really discover how it all works. The best we can do is take examples, just as I do with the metaphysics. We take examples through what we do have and what we do know. That's what they spend all their time doing. On a smaller scale, they just, do many experiments and research with what's around them, and use that to try to come to a presumptive conclusion to how everything else works, given the evidence of how things work here and now. Which might not be the perfect way of going about it, but it's the only choice we have. And that's what says to me that there is no ultimate good. Because if chaos was the main principle of the universe, there would certainly be much more choices in life. There would certainly be much more weird shit going down. And if, law was the most monopolizing force in the universe, things would actually make more sense. There would be more semblance to what's going on. Not simply, some asshole moderators get to control every facet of your thinking and you're okay with that, but there would actually be reason behind it, rationality behind it. And if it was good, I can certainly say that everyone would be better, they'd feel better, they'd live longer, everything would just be better. But no, it just seems to come down to more and more evil. It gets worse. That's what I keep saying, that no matter which principle you cling to, no matter which quantum theory you want to claim as your own, it just gets worse. It just gets down to more and more evil, more and more destruction. And some of these theories believe in multiverse theory, where literally the universe reproduces more universes. That a black hole is essentially like a fetus or a uterus, and in that black hole there are bubbles forming at the bottom, and these bubbles are multiverses that are slightly different from the universe before it. Kind of like how our children inherit our genes, but are different because they mix together and they, use DNA to redistribute the structure, the basic structure and building blocks of their core. And so every universe is slightly different from the previous one, and it gets a little better every time through evolutionary principle. But that there's no evidence to suggest it gets better, just evidence that it might change, evidence that it might make more sense, and if you ask me, just evidence that it gets worse, that it gets more vicious, that it gets more self-defeating, that it gets more depressing, more monstrous, and things like that. That's what it really comes down to. Are you going to cling to idealism, or cynicism, or realism, or whatever? But at the end of the day, you must realize that there are the things that work in here are principalities. Before your religion, before your politics, before anything else. It is simply the principalities of the fact itself. It's the fact that things run a certain way based off of almost a singularity in and of itself. The singularity of thought itself. The singularity of action itself. Every verb, every noun is based around some sort of primordial building blocks. Some sort of doodling and primitive coding that comes down to its basic unit. And if you were to tear away the surface and break it down to the most primitive numbers, it would start to make sense. And that's the lawful aspect at work. But it is not the only aspect at work. It clearly isn't the only force in the universe. Just as gravity is not the only force in the universe. There are many qualities that make up the universe and all affect it in different ways and are all almost competing for higher altitude, for more control, for more influence. And to know that is to suggest that the universe is nothing but warfare. You look at nature, and it's nothing but war. It's just constant taking from one another. You see weasels taking chicken eggs. You see raccoons taking stuff out of your trash. You see snakes eating rats, and rats eating bugs, and bugs spreading disease, killing everything so they can eat the corpses, and etc. It's just one big cycle of taking and killing and eating and blah blah blah. And to know that is to basically know life as we know it, to know all life everywhere, because it's just one giant war zone. And perhaps that is a very bleak outlook, but I don't see any evidence to suggest otherwise. And here I am, sitting in my chair, talking to you, saying that if we have to live in this war zone, the very least we could do is be able to freely talk about it. Talk about it without any restrictions, without any inhibitions, without some fucking twat called a moderator to tell us what we can and cannot say, where no one has the right to define us as someone uneligible to talk about these things. No one has the right to tell me or you that we are trolls, that we are troublemakers, that we have no right to post there, that we have no right to say what we want to say, because that not only inhibits the mind, it not only inhibits knowledge and the experience that comes with talking to new people, but it's just nefarious. It's just sinister and comes down to being evil for the sake of being evil. And they might argue that it's to preserve the forum, that it's to make sure it doesn't run amok. But really, what are they protecting? Nobody. Right now, Fematheus is having to use another account because no one was around to fucking protect her account. Everyone was false flagging her, and YouTube didn't do jack shit about it. They ignored it. So where the fuck were the moderators then? They're never around. They don't care about people. They don't care about maintaining order. It's about jacking themselves off to the fact that they have power over other people. And so many others are okay with that because you are evil too. Evil, evil, evil. That is the main force of this universe. And it comes in many different forms. It comes in different shapes and sizes and colors. But deep down, the universe is primarily evil. And I think that's why people have such a problem with what I say. It has nothing to do with the fact that I'm antagonistic or aggressive or anything like that. It comes down to the fact that they don't like to be called evil because they know fucking well they are. You're evil, your mom was evil, your grandmama was evil, everyone that ever lived was evil. They just were different evils, and that's why they went to war, and that's why they murdered, and that's why they robbed, and that's why shit like that happens. Because one evil is not like the other, and they figure, well fuck that one, I'm gonna get what's mine. And that's why evil tends to eat at each other. But that's really what our world is. That's what I mean by evil versus evil, black and gray morality. Where it comes down to just evil. And if you know that, maybe you can lean less toward evil alignment and at least more toward lawful or chaotic alignment. So hopefully that taught you a little something. Hopefully you better understand where I'm coming from when I say these things and make these videos. And I guess I'll see you later.